I want to go to the academy, and how do you start doing it?
It really gets after what they're doing outside of school. But the academies look at the whole person concept. So just because you have a less than a 4.0 average, that should not prevent you from applying.
And then I'll say, all right, so who are you? Why are you here, other than the fact that you live in this house?
Because you told me to be here. So who am I? I'm Greg. Nice to meet everybody out there. I'm a retired Army Brigadier General, which is 1 star. And after retiring from the Army in 2019, I took on some volunteer jobs. One of those was to be a board member on our Congressman's Academy Selection Board. So we interviewed all the kids that were applying to go to one of the military academies, West Point, Annapolis, the Air Force Academy, etc. And one of the things that was interesting to me is we had a number of homeschooled kids that applied for the service academies, and that's kind of the genesis of this discussion.
That's right. You told me, and I said, oh, look at that. I think we've got some info here. So not only do I think that it's important to everybody, but the fact that it's really cool that there are homeschool kids showing up to your board. Mm-hmm. First of all, how do you get into the military?
Well, there's a couple ways. As you mentioned, you can enlist if you want to be an enlisted person in the military, or you can join the Reserve Officer Training Corps in college, ROTC, and get a commission as an officer, or you can attend one of the service academies, and then at the end of your time in the service academy, again, you are commissioned as an officer in the military. There's a couple of other ways, direct commissioning, like for doctors and things like that, but in general, people that choose to go into the military either enlist or they go through the pipeline to become an officer and come in as an officer.
So you started out as an officer?
No, I started as an enlisted person. I enlisted shortly out of high school. And partway through college, I decided that I liked it. And I was in the Army National Guard at the time. And so I went and talked to the folks at ROTC, and I joined ROTC. And I was commissioned when I graduated from college.
All right, hold that thought. I have to change the lighting here just a second. Okay, that's better. Well, so let's start from, I'm in high school or I'm in 8th grade and I'm thinking, oh, well, I want to join the military. And somebody says the academy. Why would I want to go to the academy, and how do you start doing it?
So the military academies are very high-end academic institutions. They're all essentially engineering schools. No matter what degree you get in the academy, you get a Bachelor of Science. They don't do Bachelor of Arts. So they're very heavy on engineering types of things, but they do offer a variety of different majors in degree programs. So what makes it unique is it is free. It's highly competitive to get in. They're really high-end institutions. And instead of paying, or a family having to pay a pile of money in tuition, they are free with a service obligation. So you get a 4-year degree, you get room and board, they get a stipend, so they're paid essentially while they're in school, and then they graduate commission, and they owe the military 5 years of their life after that. So that's the payback, but it's a tremendous opportunity.
So then if I wanted to try to get into the any academy, I would apply to a senator?
Yeah, so to get into the academies, you have to be nominated. Nominations can come from a congressman, a senator, the president, and the vice president. So the typical route the kids take is they apply through the congressman in their district and or the senators from their state.
Okay, let's explain more about that then, the senator thing. There's more than one board in this state?
Yes. So North Dakota has 2 senators and 1 congressman because of our population. So there's 3 boards, 1 for each of the senators' offices and 1 for the congressman. And most kids apply to all 3.
Okay, so I don't have to choose which one I'm going to apply to. I can send my application to every single one.
Absolutely.
Why would I not do that? Why would I only send it to one?
I have no idea. Some kids do that. They just want a senator's nomination instead of the congressman. It doesn't make any difference. They're not weighted any differently.
Nobody at the academy is going to look and go, oh, well, it was just Congressman so-and-so and not the senator. Therefore, that application into the school is less.
it makes no difference.
Okay, so every kid should apply. If they want to go to school, if they want to apply, they should apply to every single avenue.
Yeah, and the reason for that is each of the senators and each congressperson has a certain number of nominations that they're allowed to make each year. So you increase your chances if you apply to multiple offices because they each have a certain number of nominations to different academies.
So how does a kid even get before you on the board?
Each congressional office has a process. They should have something on their individual websites on how to go about applying. In Congressman Armstrong's office, for example, the one that I'm the most familiar with because that's the board that I sat on, they've got an application process online with the required documentation that the kids have to provide, the timelines because the board meets in the fall. So there's a timeline that they have to meet to get all of their information in, and then they come to the board and we interview each of them and we rank order them, and then the three offices get together and figure out which kid they're going to give a nomination to for each academy. So they kind of do their horse trading depending on who's got which nominations that year.
Let's get back to the packet then. What's in the packet?
So the packet, and again, this may differ depending on each congressional office and how they do it. But in our particular case, the kids have to provide, there's like a data sheet that they have to fill out and sign. They have to provide their grades, so they get a high school transcript, their ACT and SAT scores. They have to write a resume, and that particular it really gets after what they're doing outside of school, extracurriculars and such. And then they have to write an essay, and we evaluate their written communication skills by way of the essay.
Oh, I want to ask about that. But does everyone have A's?
No. Now, the kids that get into the academies tend to be very high performers GPA-wise, and their standardized test scores, ACT and SAT, they tend to be the cream of the crop. They're kind of all overachievers. They all have really high grades. They're doing a bunch of extracurriculars. They're in sports. They do volunteer work. I honestly don't know when some of these kids sleep because they do so much. But the academies look at the whole person concept. So just because you have a less than a 4.0 average, that should not prevent you from applying.
Okay, then I'm a kid who is below the average standard of living or income, and I have to work. I can't play football. I can't be a team leader. I have to have a job and help my family. Does that mean I shouldn't apply? No,
absolutely not. No. So again, going back to the whole person concept, the academies like to see sports because everybody, if you're not in a sport at the academy, you're going to do intramural sports because physical activity is very important. However, they understand that not everybody can be a varsity athlete or be in student council, or they may have to have a job. So they look at the job as an extracurricular activity. And particularly if the kid is in some sort of a leadership role in that job, that counts for a lot because we're looking at leadership potential.
Okay, so say I'm a part-time manager at Hardee's then.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wouldn't be looked on any differently or lower than somebody who was the captain of the football team.
So I don't have any insight into the actual admissions process at the academy. So after we do our board, the congressmen or senators make their nominations, and then there's another process that happens at the academy, and I don't have insight into that.
You're the first one. You're the one that
right.
Then goes out of state.
Correct.
After that, it goes out of state.
Yes.
Okay. So you're the board that nominates for the senator.
We recommend who he should nominate.
I want to hear about the essays. I want to hear everything you can tell me. And we're doing privacy here, so we're not going to discuss any particular thing. I do want to hear in general, what are the essays like? Because of the recent articles and things about kids not reading really well, and I want to talk about reading too. And therefore, if they can't maybe write really, really well, or they all write the same thing, because in my experience, people who apply to things, generally you see the same essay over and over because they've been coached. by everybody who thinks that's the way to get in.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you see about that? What are the good essays?
So kind of going back a step, I have the experience on one board. So on our board, in fact, all three of them in the state here ask for the same essay, and the topic is why I want to be an officer in the U.S. military. Pretty straightforward. I'm sure that's a pretty common one across the country.
But sometimes the straightforward stuff can end up sounding pretty boring. Yes.
So what I have found in reading these is some kids are trying desperately to tell us what they think that we want to hear. Some of them are not very good at writing, and that's
it shows.
It really shows.
And it's noted.
It is, yeah. We actually score them. We have a score sheet, and their essay is one of the things that we score, and it's a 1 through 10 scale, 10 being the best. Some of them are really good, and you can tell. I mean, they're heartfelt. I really want to do this. Some kids are like, they're super patriotic, and they've got a history of service in their family, and they want to do their part, and they really want to do this. And the academies are a great way for them, A, to get in, and B, to, if they're from a lower income kind of situation, a free high-end college education. You have that degree for life.
And they explain that in their essay.
Yeah.
And they explain it well. So there's a lot of good writers, or average, or what? What do you say?
It runs the gamut. And what really, what I found really interesting is some kids that had very high standardized test scores, and they had straight A's in English, and their writing was horrendous. I mean, it just wasn't good.
Did you guys all talk about that?
We did, yeah. And it's like something isn't right here, and maybe it went. And we'll ask them.
What do they? Oh, I guess. What do they say?
So we have regular questions that we ask them, but we can follow up on anything in the packet if we want more information on it. And one of the common ones is, we'll see a disconnect between grades and their standardized test scores. How do you explain that? If
their grades are higher than their standardized tests,
so we'll
or vice versa? Or?
It's typically, it'll be a high GPA, and they didn't do well on their SAT or their ACT. And so it's like, what happened there? And we get a variety of stories from, I didn't prepare for it. I was too busy. I just realized the night before I had to take it the next day, and I was tired and I didn't do well. And
you get answers like
oh
that?
Yeah, they're honest. Yeah, they're honest, and we want them to be honest because everybody's human and they make mistakes. The good news is they get a chance to take the test again. If they've got a bad ACT or SAT score, they can retest. And then before it's not too late. Correct. Before it goes up to the academy admissions people,
they get another shot after they see you.
Correct.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we've covered some of the essay stuff. Now, what about the interview? I want to ask, because I know Greg doesn't not know any of these questions. Are they so freaked out about the board? Because going in front of a board to talk to people, and this is everything to them. Do you have kids who kind of break down a little bit?
We keep a box of tissues on hand because it does happen. Yeah, and I mean...
Does that count against them?
No, it doesn't. So we expect that out of some of them, just because this may be the first time, and it's a little bit overwhelming for them, right? So they walk into a room, and there's 4 of us on our board, and the board numbers may vary, but my board has 4 people, and they are sitting in a chair out in front of us, looking at these 4 dudes that are about to ask them some questions.
And you and I have done that a bazillion times.
Yeah, we've done.
But the first time was horrible.
And when you're in high school and you've got these distinguished people, sitting there getting ready to ask you questions, some of them just kind of freak out a little bit.
What do you do?
So we start with and this is just a technique that our board uses. They get thrown an icebreaker question. This year's question was, what is your favorite Halloween candy? Because the board was right around Halloween. And that kind of throws a couple of them off, and then we just kind of start to have a conversation. They lighten up a little bit.
It loosens them up.
And then we talk to them. In other cases, we've had some kids that just they just lose their composure. So we stop. We let them leave the room, gain their composure back, and then come back in.
Are these exceptions to the rule for the most part?
For the most part.
They're nervous, but they're ready to go.
Yeah. yeah, that's a good way of
Is
putting
there
it.
a way to coach that, or what would you say to a kid who knows that they might be that kid?
They probably need to try to get some experience before they go to the board in talking to somebody that they're not comfortable talking to.
Okay, and here's where I would add, I'm a huge advocate for role playing, and huge. Where you even dress the part, you even make up the room, it could even be family members who sit there, but they can't break role. And I think that would help. So where you walk in and then just practice run.
Yeah.
Okay, that might be
the only thing is you can't, as a role player, anticipate what the questions might be from the actual board, but you can give them a pretty good idea.
They should know the answers to all of these questions.
Yeah, and you kind of know where we're going to go with this.
Okay. You're not going to ask them how to use a satchel charge or how
No.
to drive a tank or something like that.
No.
You're going to ask them appropriate questions.
We want
for
to
what
get to
they're
know
doing.
them. We want to know what makes them tick. We want to know their thoughts on different things. We ask them, like, what books are you reading now? What's your favorite topic in school and why? There's any number of things. We ask them about some
reading?
Leadership questions. So most of the kids that we interviewed the last couple of years, we had some voracious readers and we had some that didn't have time to read anything outside of class. So it kind of ran the gamut.
But do they have a reading list? Do they send you? Do they give you a reading list of books that they have read? Is that important?
No. We just ask them. That was one of the questions that came up this year. Is what are you reading?
What are you reading?
Because we want to see if they've got some intellectual curiosity, or are they spreading their wings beyond just what's being fed to them by the school?
Okay. And I want to get to the homeschool kids part 2 in just a little bit. But how do you screen for AI? Everybody's talking about that now. So do you guys screen for AI?
We don't yet. I don't know though if the congressman's staff does that before we get the packets. It's possible. I don't know.
And because you know my opinion on legacy kids, for people who don't know what legacy kids are, they're essentially kids whose parents went to that school. So for instance, if your parents went to Harvard, unfortunately, one of the questions, I think maybe they've stopped it, of the first, I think one of the first 3 questions in Harvard is which one of your parents went here. Are legacy kids in the academy?
So at the board level, they don't get any special treatment. We've seen several of them. We actually get quite a few whose parents have served in the military but were not academy graduates. There's not a tremendous number of former academy people up here in North Dakota, but there's a lot of former Air Force people. We have 2 air bases here. So we get a lot of kids who grew up as military kids, and they saw what mom and dad did, and they want to do that too, and they understand the challenges that are associated with serving in the military, and they really want to do it. So in terms of the legacy side, I don't know what happens at the academy admissions process, if they get an extra point or something, if they're a legacy kid. I don't know the answer to that, but at the board, they don't. And
if you're interviewing for all of the academies, does the kid get to choose which academy they go to?
They have a wish list, so we give them, that's one of the things that they have to fill out on the info form.
So I want to go into the Naval Academy, and that's it. That's all I want to do is go into the Naval Academy.
That's a risky move.
Why?
So each year, the number of nominations each of the congressmen and senators have varies. And if that kid only wants to go to a single academy, and I've seen this happen multiple times, where they put one and they leave the other 3 blank. They don't want to go to any of the other 3. The risk that you're running is at the end of the interview process, when we rank order everybody, and then the 3 offices get together and then they combine those scores, so there's a 1 to N list of the kids that get rank ordered. If the number 1 rank ordered kid wants to go to the Naval Academy and there's only 1 slot available, that person's going to get it, and the kid may be number 2 or 3, and that was the only one he picked. He's not going to get a nomination.
But he could have maybe gotten a nomination, or she, from somewhere
else.
Absolutely,
yeah. So my recommendation is to apply one, and you get to rank order them, right? So number 1 may be the Naval Academy, number 2 is West Point, number 3 Air Force, number 4 is the Merchant Marine Academy. And the Coast Guard Academy is a separate thing. We don't do the Coast Guard Academy. But my recommendation would be that they rank order them, but put a number in front of all of them. Now, some kids, particularly here, we're a fairly landlocked state. The Merchant Marine Academy, they have no interest in that. It's like, okay,
well,
peace out.
The base is near here too for the Air Force, right?
Yeah, so we get a lot of kids that want to go to the Air Force Academy, and we get quite a few, pretty evenly split between Annapolis and West Point.
But why would you want to encourage a kid who say, my grandpa was in the Air Force, my dad's in the Air Force, my mother was in the Air Force, now I want to be in the Air Force? Why would you encourage them to consider other ones? Because they don't know what they don't know.
They don't know. Right? So a lot of these kids want to fly jets.
Well, then I got to go into the Air Force. I want to be a pilot.
No. The Navy's got jets. The Army's got helicopters and fixed wing planes. I mean, there's other ways to get there. And I don't know if this is true anymore, but it used to be true where if you graduated from one of the academies, you could accept your commission in any of the services. I don't know if they're still doing that or not. I had an Army colonel that worked for me that had gone to the Air Force Academy. He chose to serve in the Army instead of the Air Force. So I don't know if they're still doing that or not.
Okay, I've got another question about lower income kids. How might they build their resume to be competitive? What advice might you give a kid who's having a little bit more trouble? Good grades, but can't do... I mean, up here, hockey's outrageously expensive, too. You gotta...
Yes.
Stuff costs money.
Yep.
What does that mean for a kid who can't afford to do all those things but wants an opportunity to serve and go into the academy? And maybe they can't afford to go to university and this is their way to go.
Yeah. So I have seen kids that were not in varsity sports, but they were in student council.
Okay.
They were in, the science club, the math club, the chess club, whatever. We look for extracurriculars. If at all possible, they need to try to get into a leadership position. So that carries a lot of weight because it shows leadership potential. And then work outside. So we had one kid, he's at West Point right now, actually, from a couple of years ago, that his only extracurriculars he was in band, and he worked on the family ranch all summer. He was fencing. He helped his dad. He was
like the foreman.
He's a ranch kid, but he was very articulate when we interviewed him, and he was very upfront. He's like, I have to help my dad. I don't have time to go play football. I have to take care of the cattle. Hey, that shows responsibility. It shows maturity. Okay. That's all good.
Oh, okay. What advice might you give a kid who shows up? How might one present oneself? We all know we should dress really well if we go to an interview, but how do you think, does that differ from the board?
Well, one of the other things that they have to provide us is a photo. And I failed to mention that earlier as part of their packet.
That can upset some people because a lot of people don't think that it matters what we look like. But this is the military, so it's a little different.
It is different, and what we're looking for is somebody who presents themselves professionally. So most of the kids show up in business attire. The young men are wearing suits, some with ties, some open collar. The young ladies are in business kind of pantsuits or skirts or whatever. They look professional. Every once in a while, we get a kid that just looks like a dirtbag, and that doesn't really come across very well.
And dirtbag is a common term in the military.
It is.
If
you show up in a dirty T-shirt for this interview, it's not going to go well for you. We're looking for professional presentation.
Okay, well, what about now switching to a contender? Somebody who's a contender but needs a little bit more time, where you look at them and go, I think they look like they could go, but they need a little bit more growth. First, what is growth? What is it that they would need to get in, and how would you assess that, and what do you do with them?
Yep. So what happens with those kids? Typically, they may not get a primary nomination, but they may get there's another term for the backup one. I don't remember what the term is, but so we can forward their name that way, or we can forward them with a formal nomination, and the academy admissions people will look at it and go, this kid is not ready academically for the academy, but this kid has got a lot of potential and it's somebody that we want to be one of our students. So then they will be offered a position at the prep school. Each of the academies has a prep school.
Prep school is like grade 13.
Exactly. Yep.
So they're done with high school.
Yep.
They're not in college.
And they get to work on whatever their weekend. If they're
what does
having
it cost
trouble,
them?
Nothing. If they're having trouble with math or English as a second language or
and you have had
whatever.
ESL too, right?
Yes, we've had ESL kids come in. Yep, we've had 2 of them in the last few years that immigrated here from Africa. And one of the young ladies we interviewed this year, English was a second language, and she was taking AP English in high school. She was that driven to get it right.
Now, if one of them had needed, them being any of the applicants, needed that extra time, the only thing that does cost them is time.
Right.
Because when they get out of the prep school, are they guaranteed an entrance into
Not in all cases. We've had a couple of them that went to the prep school. They came back and reboarded, and we'll typically reboard them automatically if they want to keep going, and then they get a renomination. So the nomination's good for a year, and
so it is a bit of a gamble.
It is
a skosh. What does that mean? Do you know if does that count for any credits going into college, or do they lose a year?
I don't know that.
Okay,
that's a good question.
That is kind of a good question, isn't
Yeah.
it? But I mean, it can't hurt anyway because it was free.
Yes.
Okay, and you went to school for free. I think that couldn't hurt. Do you think a kid needs to know in their freshman year of high school, do they have to have it all together of, I need to do this, this, and this because I want to apply to the academy? What happens? Is it too late if they're a junior and they go, oh, I didn't even know about this. Now what? Is it too late?
It's not too late, but ideally they would be prepping themselves for success. They would be excelling in school GPA wise. They would be involved in extracurriculars, sports if possible, and just doing, again, it's the whole person concept that we look at. So it's not just one thing.
And roughly the same things that a competitive private or public institution would look for. So if they're striving for that and then take and pivot and go, well, instead of Cornell or instead of my state school, I now want to do this, but I've been a leader in this and I've got really good grades, they could
absolutely
easily jump and
yep.
You've got kids who apply to the academies as well as every other school too.
Sure.
So do you get turned down? Do kids get in and then go, I got another offer, I'm going to go here?
So I don't know, because we don't, once they leave the board, we don't get a lot of feedback other than the congressman's office sends an email out and said that this is the rank order of the kids that are getting noms. And then after that, we don't have any dealings with them. There are, I'm sure there are cases where the kid changes their mind because they got into Harvard and they want to do that instead of going to an academy. I'm sure that happens, but it's very, very, very competitive to get into these institutions. So I think most of the kids that get a chance to go, they go.
They go. Okay, so before, I've got one question. I have one last question before that. What is the difference between a homeschool kid and every other kid when they go to the board? Do you see any difference?
Not really. No, they're the homeschool kids are required to have a transcript, and they all provide a transcript. The ones that I have seen have been doing really well on their standardized tests. Their grades are good, and they're involved in a bunch of stuff. So one of the good things in North Dakota is homeschool kids are allowed to do things in the public school. So a lot of the homeschool kids are in sports,
in the school.
They're doing other things, or they're volunteering. They're in civic groups. They're doing church stuff. They're doing whatever outside of school. Eagle Scouts, you name it. They're doing all those types of things. So it's the same. I didn't see any differentiation, and all the homeschool kids that we interviewed did really well.
Mm-hmm. All right, I've got the last question. Are you ready?
Send it.
Okay. If Morgan comes up to us and says, I think I want to go into the military, maybe an academy, but generally just the military, what would you have to say to that? What would you say?
If it's something that she wants to do, I would not discourage her from doing that. I had a great career. You had a great your time in the Navy and in government service. I mean, it's not for everyone. I am not advocating that anybody goes into the military or doesn't. But if it's something that she wants to do, I'd be happy to have an honest conversation with her about what to expect. And I would not discourage her from doing it because it's a higher calling. It's at least it was for me. And but if it's not something that is a good fit for her, then she shouldn't go.
Mm-hmm. I'd say the same thing. Yeah, I'd just ask her why. But if she wants to go to college, I'd ask her why she wants to go there too.
True.
Don't we need to know her why?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. What else? Did I miss anything?
You were going to ask me in 30 seconds or less to explain what I like about you the most.
The 10 things that you like about me the most.
But I can't do it in less than an hour.
Oh, you prepared for that.
I did. I was ready.
You're awesome. So if this helps one kid out there or one parent, kind of helping you see that maybe a military academy is something that your son or daughter might be interested in, then great. Then we've helped one kid. Or maybe it's, oh no, I don't want to do that at all. But at least the info is out there. So I hope someone found it helpful. Thank you. See ya.